The Alpha King's hand trembled as he placed the sleeping child into the widow's arms, his wolf howling a mournful song that only he could hear, because this girl with silver-streaked hair and eyes like winter storms was his daughter, and he was condemning her to a life of poverty and anonymity to save her from the assassins who'd already murdered her mother in the palace nursery 3 nights ago. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. "Your Majesty," the widow whispered, her weathered face creasing with confusion as she looked down at the bundle in her arms. "I don't understand. Why would you—" "Her name is Sarah now," King Aldrich interrupted, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "Not Seraphina. Never speak her true name again. She is your daughter, born of your late husband before he died. Do you understand, Marin?" The widow, Marin, clutched the child closer, her eyes widening as she took in the distinctive silver streaks in the girl's dark hair, hair that marked royal blood, hair that would get them both killed if anyone recognized it. "The silver," Marin breathed, "will fade with the suppressant I've given her." Aldrich's jaw clenched. "She'll have no memory of the palace, no connection to her wolf until her 18th year. By then, perhaps the realm will be safe again." His voice cracked on the last word. "Perhaps I will have found the traitors who killed my queen." Marin's throat worked. She'd lost her own daughter to fever 2 winters ago, and her husband to a hunting accident shortly after. The cottage at the edge of the village had been too quiet, too empty. But this, "They'll hunt for her," she said. "They believe she died with her mother." Aldrich's eyes, the same storm gray as the child's, glistened. "The bodies were burned beyond recognition. As far as the kingdom knows, the royal line ends with me." He reached out, touching the sleeping child's cheek with a gentleness that made Marin's heart ache. "Take care of her as if she were your own, Marin. Let her know kindness. Let her know laughter. Give her the childhood I never had. And if she asks about her father, tell her he was a good man who loved her more than life." The king stepped back, shadows swallowing his features. "Tell her he died wishing he could have been braver." Then he was gone, dissolving into the forest darkness like smoke, leaving Marin alone with a sleeping princess who would grow up believing she was nothing more than a poor villager's daughter. 12 years later, Sarah learned exactly how much nothing she was worth. "You're not coming to the lunar gathering," her foster brother Jace announced, blocking the doorway with his considerably larger frame. At 17, he had already had his first shift, already been accepted into the Pack's warrior training. At 14, Sarah was still wolfless, still waiting for the transformation that should have come on her 13th birthday. "Marin said I could go." Sarah tried to duck under his arm, but he caught her shoulder, pushing her back with casual cruelty. "Marin's not here, and I'm not wasting my night watching you embarrass yourself." His lip curled. "The gathering is for real Pack members, not defective humans pretending to be wolves." The words struck like claws. Sarah had heard variations of them for months now, ever since her 13th birthday had passed without a shift, without even a whisper of her wolf's presence. In their world, a shifter who didn't transform by 14 was considered broken, cursed. "I'm not defective." But her voice wavered. "Prove it." Jace's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface with an envy burn in Sarah's chest. "Shift right now. Show me your wolf, and I'll let you come." She couldn't. She'd tried 1,000 times, reaching for the beast that should have been her birthright, finding only emptiness where her wolf should have lived. Jace's expression shifted from cruel amusement to something darker. That's what I thought. Now get out of my way. Some of us actually belong in this pack. He shoved past her, leaving Sarah standing in the cottage doorway, watching the other young wolves stream toward the forest clearing where the lunar gathering would be held, where unmated wolves would dance under the full moon, seeking their destined partners, where Sarah would never be welcome. He shouldn't speak to you that way. The voice came from behind her. Marin returned from the healer's cottage where she worked, her face drawn with exhaustion and disappointment. He's right, though. Sarah turned away from the doorway, away from the sounds of laughter and howls echoing through the village. I don't belong there. I don't belong anywhere. Marin's hands were gentle as she turned Sarah to face her. At 62, Marin was still strong, still sharp, but lately there'd been a fragility to her that frightened Sarah, a sense of time running out. "Listen to me carefully," Marin said. "Your worth has nothing to do with when or if your wolf comes. You are brave and kind and strong in ways that have nothing to do with shifting. Don't let Jace or anyone else make you believe otherwise." But Sarah could see the worry in Marin's eyes, the unspoken question. What would happen to a wolfless girl in a pack that valued strength above all else? The answer came sooner than either of them expected. 3 months later, Marin collapsed while gathering herbs in the forest. Sarah found her at dusk, her foster mother's body cold against the moss-covered ground, her eyes open and unseeing. The healer said it was her heart, that it had simply stopped, worn out by years of hard work and harder losses. Sarah said nothing. She prepared the body according to pack tradition, attended the brief ceremony, and scattered Marin's ashes in the forest she loved. And when it was done, when the last of the villagers had offered their hollow condolences, Sarah returned to the cottage alone. Jace had already moved out, taken in by a warrior family who saw potential in his strength. He'd come to the funeral, but hadn't looked at Sarah once. She had exactly 3 silver coins, half a bag of grain, and a cottage that belonged to the pack, not to her. By pack law, she had 1 month to prove her value, find a mate, secure a position, or demonstrate her wolf before she'd be expelled from pack lands entirely. 1 month before she became rogue. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, Sarah felt something cold and sharp settle into her chest, something that felt almost like relief. She'd spent 14 years trying to belong somewhere she was never meant to be. Maybe it was time to stop trying. The decision to leave came easily after that. Sarah packed light, Marin's traveling cloak, dried meat and bread, the 3 silver coins, and a knife she'd stolen from Jace's room before he'd moved out. She left at dawn, before the village woke, taking the eastern road that led away from pack territory and toward the neutral city of Ashford. She'd heard stories about Ashford, a place where wolves and humans lived side by side, where pack law didn't reach, where someone could disappear and start over. It sounded like a fairy tale. It sounded like freedom. The journey took 4 days on foot. Sarah slept in hollow trees and drank from streams, her body adapting to the hardship with a resilience that surprised her. On the 4th evening, as the sun set over Ashford's gray stone walls, Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. Not her wolf. Something else. Something that whispered, "You were always meant to leave." Ashford was larger than Sarah had imagined. A sprawling city of narrow streets and tall buildings, market squares and taverns, temples and training yards. The scent of humanity was overwhelming at first, mixed with the musk of shifters who walked openly among the crowds without fear of discovery. Sarah found work within a week at a tavern called the Silver Moon, washing dishes and serving drinks to patrons who didn't care whether she had a wolf or not. The owner, a gruff human woman named Bess, asked no questions about Sarah's past and paid her enough to rent a tiny room above a bakery. It wasn't much, but it was hers. The months blurred together, a pattern of work and sleep, of learning to navigate city life, of slowly building something that resembled normalcy. Sarah made no friends, formed no attachments. She'd learned that lesson already. Then, 3 days before her 18th birthday, everything changed. The pain started at midnight, a burning sensation that spread from Sarah's chest to her limbs, setting every nerve ablaze. She collapsed in her rented room, biting down on her sleeve to muffle her screams as her body convulsed. This was it. This was her shift. Except it wasn't. The pain intensified, bones threatening to break and reform, but something was stopping the transformation. Something was holding her wolf back, and the conflict between beast and barrier was tearing Sarah apart from the inside. Through the agony, Sarah heard a voice, her wolf's voice, clear and furious. "Break it! Break the chains they put on us!" What chains? The suppressant, the king's curse. Break it now, or we die here. Sarah didn't understand, but she reached for the presence of her wolf with desperate strength, finding a barrier she'd never noticed before. A thick, oily magic wound around her core like chains. She pulled at it mentally, tearing at the suppressant that had kept her wolf dormant for 18 years. The barrier shattered. The shift took her like a wave, brutal and overwhelming. Sarah's body broke and reformed, her screams transforming into a howl that shattered the window glass. When it was done, when she finally stood on 4 legs instead of 2, Sarah looked down at her paws and saw them shining silver in the moonlight. Not gray, not brown, silver, royal silver. And with the shift came memories that weren't hers, or were they? Flashes of a palace nursery, a woman with silver-streaked hair singing lullabies, the scent of jasmine and blood, a man's voice saying, "I'm sorry, my little storm, I'm so sorry." Sarah shifted back to human form with a thought, her body obeying instincts she hadn't known she possessed. She stood naked and shaking in the wreckage of her room, understanding crashing over her like ice water. She wasn't Marin's daughter. She wasn't a villager's child at all. She was Seraphina Stormborn. A male voice said from the doorway, "Daughter of Aldrich Stormborn, the Alpha King. We've been searching for you for a very long time." Sarah spun, instinctively dropping into a crouch. The man in the doorway was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes that gleamed gold in the darkness. He wore the black leather of a royal guard, and his scent, pine and snow and authority, made her wolf rumble with recognition. Not a threat. Pack. But Sarah had no pack. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Commander Reeve of the King's Guard." He stepped into the room, his movements careful and non-threatening despite his size. "I've been tracking suppressant signatures across the kingdom for 5 years. When yours broke tonight, every wolf within 100 miles felt it." His gaze swept over her, taking in her silver-streaked hair, her storm-gray eyes. "You look exactly like your mother." "I don't have a mother. I don't have a father." Sarah grabbed the blanket from her bed, wrapping it around herself with shaking hands. "I don't have anything." "You have a birthright." Reeve's expression softened slightly. "And a father who's been mourning you for 18 years. He needs to know you're alive, Seraphina." "My name is Sarah." "Your name is Seraphina Stormborn, Princess of the Northern Realm, and you've been in hiding since the night your mother was murdered." Reeve's voice gentled. "I know this is overwhelming, I know you have no reason to trust me, but your father is dying, Sarah, slowly, from a wound that won't heal, a poisoned blade meant for you. He has perhaps 6 months left, and he deserves to see his daughter one more time before the end." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. A father, a dying father who'd hidden her away to save her life. A father who'd given her to Marin and said, "Take care of her, as if she were your own." "Why should I believe any of this?" Sarah whispered. Reeve reached into his jacket, pulling out a small portrait frame. He held it out, and Sarah took it with trembling hands. The painting showed a young woman with silver-streaked dark hair and storm-gray eyes, her expression serene and kind. She could have been looking at her own reflection, aged 10 years. "Your mother," Reeve said quietly, "Queen Elena Stormborn. She died protecting you. Your father has carried that portrait over his heart every day since." Sarah's vision blurred. She'd spent her whole life believing she was nobody, nothing, just a wolfless orphan with no place in the world. And all along, she'd been someone's daughter, someone's target. "The assassins," she said hoarsely, "are they still hunting me? We've eliminated most of the conspiracy, but the leader, a wolf named Thorn who wants the throne for himself, remains at large." Reeve's jaw clenched. "Your father refused to name a new heir, refused to remarry. He's been waiting for you, Sarah, hoping you'd survived, praying you'd come home." Home. The word was foreign on her tongue. She'd never had a home, not really. The cottage had been Marin's. The village had been Jace's. The rented room was just a place to sleep. But a palace? A kingdom? A dying father who'd loved her enough to let her go? "If I come with you," Sarah said slowly, "what happens then?" "Your father meets his daughter. You learn what it means to be a princess. And when he passes, you decide whether to take the throne or walk away." Reeve's eyes held hers. "It's your choice, Sarah. It's always been your choice. Your father made sure of that when he gave you to Marin. He gave you freedom. The question is whether you want to give him closure." Sarah looked at the portrait again, at the woman who died to save her, at the mother she'd never known, but who'd loved her enough to sacrifice everything. How could she refuse? "I'll come," she whispered, "but I'm not making any promises about the throne." Reeve's expression lightened with something that might have been relief. "Fair enough, princess. Shall we?" The journey to the capital took 2 days by horse, a much faster route than Sarah's earlier wandering. Reeve rode beside her in silence, giving her space to process the revelations that had upended her world. Sarah spent the hours trying to reconcile her understanding of herself with this new identity. Princess Seraphina Stormborn, heir to the Northern Realm, daughter of a dying king. It felt like a story happening to someone else. They reached the palace at dusk on the second day, a sprawling structure of white stone and silver spires that took Sarah's breath away. The gates opened at Reeve's approach, guards bowing low as they passed. "The king is in his chambers," Reeve said as they dismounted in the courtyard. "He doesn't know you're coming. I thought it should be a surprise." Sarah's stomach twisted. What if he doesn't recognize me? "He'll recognize you." Reeve's smile was gentle. "Trust me." He led her through corridors of polished marble and vaulted ceilings, past tapestries depicting battles and celebrations, wolves and moons. Sarah felt her wolf stirring inside her, responding to the pack scent that permeated every stone. This place knew her, recognized her, welcomed her home. They stopped before a set of carved double doors. Reeve knocked once, then pushed them open without waiting for a response. The chamber beyond was large but simply furnished. A bed, a desk, bookshelves lining the walls. And in a chair by the window, silhouetted against the dying light, sat a man who looked like had aged 100 years. King Aldrich Stormborn had silver-streaked hair and storm-gray eyes, just like Sarah. But his face was gaunt, his shoulders bowed, and there was a grayness to his skin that spoke of illness and pain. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from mild annoyance to frozen shock. "Impossible," he breathed. "Your Majesty," Reeve said formally, "may I present your daughter, Princess Seraphina Stormborn." Aldrich rose from the chair with visible effort, his hand gripping the armrest for support. He took a step toward Sarah, then another, his eyes never leaving her face. "My little Storm," he whispered. "Is it really you?" Sarah's throat closed. She'd prepared a dozen things to say, questions to ask, accusations to level. But faced with this broken man who'd given up everything to keep her safe, she found she had only one word. "Papa?" Aldrich's face crumpled. He crossed the remaining distance between them in 3 strides and pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her with a fierce gentleness that made her chest ache. "My daughter," he choked out. "My beautiful, brave daughter. You're alive. You're here. I feared." "I'm here," Sarah whispered, her own tears spilling over as she wrapped her arms around her father's shaking frame. "I'm here, Papa. I'm home." They stood like that for a long time. 2 people who'd been stolen from each other, reuniting across 18 years of separation and grief. When they finally pulled apart, Aldrich cupped Sarah's face in his hands, studying her with desperate intensity. "You have your mother's eyes," he said softly. "Her spirit. I see her in every line of your face. Reeve said she died protecting me. She did. The assassins came in the night, overwhelming the nursery guards. Elena fought like a demon, killing 3 of them before—" his voice broke. "Before the 4th blade found her heart. But she bought me enough time to reach you, to hide you before they could discover your location." His thumb brushed away Sarah's tears. "She loved you so much, Seraphina. We both did. Why didn't you come for me sooner?" The question emerged before Sarah could stop it. If the conspirators were mostly gone, why wait 18 years? Aldrich's expression filled with regret. The suppressant had to run its natural course. Breaking it prematurely would have killed you. Your wolf would have torn you apart trying to emerge. I had to wait until you were strong enough to survive the breaking. He glanced at Reeve. And I had to ensure every potential threat was eliminated. I wouldn't risk bringing you home only to lose you again. "But you're dying," Sarah said bluntly. Reeve said, "The poison is slow, but yes, it's killing me." Aldrich smiled sadly. "I accepted that long ago. My only regret was that I might die before seeing you again. But now," his eyes glistened, "now I can leave this world knowing my daughter is safe, that Elena's sacrifice wasn't in vain." "No," Sarah gripped her father's hands. "You can't just give up. There must be healers, medicine." "I've tried everything, little Storm. The blade was coated with shadow poison, a toxin designed specifically to kill royals. There's no cure." Aldrich's smile turned wry. "But I'm not afraid. I'll see your mother again, and I'll tell her what a magnificent woman you've become." The acceptance in his voice made Sarah want to scream. She'd just found her father. She wasn't ready to lose him. But she could see the truth in his eyes, see the grayness creeping across his skin, the labored breathing, the way he leaned heavily on her for support. He was dying, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "How long?" she whispered. "Weeks, perhaps. A month, if I'm lucky." Aldrich squeezed her hands. which means we have very little time for you to learn what it means to be queen. I never said I wanted to be queen. I know. And if you choose to walk away after I'm gone, I'll understand. The throne is a burden, Sarah. A beautiful, terrible burden that will consume your life if you let it. His expression grew serious. But you should know what you're walking away from before you decide. Let me teach you. Let me give you that much at least. How could she refuse? Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, I'll learn, but I'm not making any promises. That's all I ask. Aldrich pulled her close again, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Welcome home, my daughter. Welcome home. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of lessons and revelations. Sarah learned about pack politics and border negotiations, trade agreements and military strategy. She learned the names of the noble families and their complicated web of alliances. She learned which advisors could be trusted and which were likely sympathizers of the missing thorn. She learned what it meant to be royal. And she hated every minute of it. Not the learning itself. Sarah had always been quick to absorb new information. But the weight of expectation, the constant scrutiny from courtiers and servants, the suffocating protocols that governed every interaction, it all felt like a cage. She'd traded one kind of imprisonment for another. You look miserable, Reeve observed one evening as they stood on the palace balcony overlooking the city. He'd become something like a friend over the past weeks, a steady presence who answered her questions without judgment and occasionally smuggled her pastries from the kitchen when the formal dinners became unbearable. I don't belong here, Sarah said bluntly. I'm not a princess, Reeve. I'm a tavern girl who washes dishes and serves drinks. I don't know how to rule a kingdom. Your father was a farmer's son before he became king, Reeve said mildly. The previous royal line was overthrown in a civil war when he was 20. Aldrich earned the throne through strength and wisdom, not birthright. If he could learn, so can you. But I don't want to. The admission felt like a betrayal, but Sarah forced herself to continue. I spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough. Now I'm being told I'm too much, that I have responsibilities and duties and obligations I never asked for. She trailed off, not sure how to finish. Freedom, Reeve supplied softly. You want the same thing your father gave you when he sent you away, the chance to choose your own path. Is that selfish? It's human. Reeve turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. You know, when your father sent you away, he knew he might never see you again. He accepted that cost, but he also knew that if you survived, if you grew up away from the throne, you'd be stronger for it. You'd understand what it means to struggle, to be powerless, to fight for your place in the world. Those aren't lessons you can learn in a palace. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe your father's greatest gift wasn't keeping you alive. Maybe it was making sure you became someone worthy of the crown, whether you choose to wear it or not. Reeve's smile was crooked. The nobles think you're too rough, too common, too uncultured. But I see someone who knows what it means to suffer, to lose, to survive. That's what this kingdom needs, Sarah, not another royal who's never known hardship. Settled into Sarah's chest like stones, heavy and undeniable. She thought about Marin, who'd loved her despite having no obligation, about Jace, who'd rejected her for being different, about the village that had never wanted her and the city that had taken her in without question. She thought about all the people who'd never had the luxury of choice, who'd been born into poverty or weakness or obscurity and had no way out. If she walked away from the throne, who would speak for them? He's dying faster, Sarah said quietly. I can see it. He's not going to make it to the month. Reeve's jaw tightened. I know. What happens if I refuse the crown? If I just Leave. The throne passes to the Council of Alphas. They'll choose a new king from among the noble families, likely one of Thorn's allies, if he manages to influence the vote. Reeve's voice hardened. And everything your parents fought for, the peace between packs, the protections for the weak, the laws that prevent the strong from devouring the vulnerable, all of it will disappear within a year. No pressure, Sarah muttered. I can't tell you what to do, Sarah. Neither can your father. But I can tell you this. You're stronger than you know, braver than you think. And if you choose to fight for this kingdom, you won't be alone. Reeve's eyes gleamed gold. You'll have me, and every guard, every soldier, every wolf who still believes in what your parents built. Will stand with you. Sarah wanted to argue, to say he was wrong, that she wasn't strong or brave or capable of ruling anything, but the words wouldn't come. Because maybe, just maybe, he was right. Aldrich died 3 weeks after Sarah's return, on a quiet morning when the first snow of winter dusted the palace grounds. Sarah was with him at the end, holding his hand as his breathing grew shallow and his heartbeat slowed. He'd been unconscious for 2 days, the shadow poison finally claiming him, but in those last moments his eyes opened one final time. "Elena," he whispered, his gaze fixed on something Sarah couldn't see. Then his eyes shifted to her, clarity returning for just a moment. "Take care of them, little storm. Take care of our people." "I will," Sarah promised, tears streaming down her face. "I will, Papa, I promise." Aldrich smiled. Then his hand went limp in hers, and he was gone. The kingdom mourned for 7 days. Sarah stood beside her father's funeral pyre, watching as the flames consumed his body and sent his spirit to join her mother's in the next world. The entire pack gathered in the palace courtyard, hundreds of wolves howling their grief to the sky. Sarah howled with them, her wolf's voice rising clear and strong, a alpha's call that made every wolf present turn to stare at her in shock. She hadn't realized until that moment that her wolf wasn't just royal. It was alpha. The coronation was held 3 days later in the throne room, with every noble and alpha in the realm present to witness. Sarah wore a gown of silver and white, her hair unbound, and her mother's crown, a simple circlet of twisted silver, resting on her head. She looked like a queen. She felt like an imposter. "Do you, Seraphina Stormborn, accept the crown and all its burdens?" the high priest intoned. "Do you swear to protect this realm, to serve its people, to uphold the laws and traditions of our kind?" Sarah's throat was dry. She could say no. She could walk away right now, leave this all behind, return to the simple life she'd built in Ashford. But she thought about Marin, who'd given her love when she'd had nothing else, about the villagers who'd rejected her, about the nobles who thought she was too common, too rough, too unworthy. She thought about all the people like her, the ones born without power, without voice, without choice, who needed someone to fight for them. "I do," Sarah said clearly. "I accept the crown. I swear to protect this realm and its people with my life, my strength, and my wolf. I will be the shield for the weak and the voice for the voiceless. I will honor my parents' legacy and forge my own path. I will be the queen this kingdom needs, not the queen it expects." The throne room erupted in shocked murmurs. That wasn't the traditional oath. Sarah had just rewritten the coronation on the spot. But Reeve, standing at attention beside the throne, smiled. "Then, by the power vested in me by the council and the old ways," the high priest said, his voice uncertain but carrying, "I name you Queen Seraphina Stormborn, Alpha of Alphas, ruler of the Northern Realm. May you reign with wisdom and strength." Sarah took her place on the throne, her father's throne, now hers, and looked out at the assembled court. At the nobles who thought she was beneath them, at the guards who'd sworn to protect her, at Reeve, who'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. "I am not the queen you wanted," Sarah said, her voice ringing through the hall. "I am common-born and rough-spoken. I have worked in taverns and slept in the dirt. I have been rejected and scorned and told I was nothing." She let her wolf rise, let her eyes flash silver, let her alpha power fill the room until every wolf present dropped their gaze in instinctive submission. "But I am the queen you have, and I will not fail you." The court remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, one person began to clap. Reeve. The applause spread, hesitant at first, then growing stronger as more wolves joined in. Not everyone. Some nobles remained stone-faced, their disapproval evident. But enough people applauded that Sarah felt something warm kindle in her chest. Hope. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could be the queen her parents had believed she could become. Maybe she could finally belong somewhere. The first 3 months of Sarah's reign were brutal. She faced opposition at every turn. Nobles who questioned her decisions, alphas who challenged her authority, advisors who tried to manipulate her inexperience. The council pushed for immediate marriage to a noble alpha, insisting she needed a king to stabilize her rule. Sarah refused every suitor they presented. She also reformed the taxation system to ease the burden on poorer packs, established new protections for wolfless shifters and late bloomers, and personally oversaw the trial of 3 nobles suspected of aiding Thorne's conspiracy. The court hated her for it. The common wolves loved her. "You're making enemies," Reeve warned one evening as they reviewed intelligence reports in her study. He'd become her unofficial advisor, the one person she trusted completely. "The noble families are talking about deposing you." Let them talk. Sarah didn't look up from the report detailing grain shortages in the Eastern Territories. "They won't move against me while I have the guards and the common packs on my side." And if Thorne makes his move? "We still haven't found him, Sarah. He's out there somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike." "Then I'll deal with him when he shows his face." Sarah finally met Reeve's eyes. "I'm not afraid anymore, Reeve. For the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am and what I'm fighting for. If Thorne wants the throne, he'll have to go through me to get it." Reeve's expression softened. "Your father would be proud of you." The words landed like an arrow through Sarah's heart. She'd been so focused on surviving, on proving herself, that she'd barely let herself grieve. But now, in the quiet of her study, with only Reeve as witness, she felt the loss crash over her again. "I miss him," she whispered. "I barely knew him, but I miss him. Does that make sense?" Perfect sense. Reeve moved around the desk, pulling her to her feet and into a gentle embrace. "You're allowed to grieve, Sarah. You're allowed to be sad. Being queen doesn't mean being invulnerable." Sarah leaned into his warmth, letting herself be held for just a moment. Reeve had become her anchor over these months, steady and solid when everything else felt chaotic. She trusted him in a way she'd never trusted anyone. And lately, she'd started to feel something more than trust. "Reeve," she said softly, pulling back just enough to meet his eyes. "What are we doing?" His throat bobbed. "What do you mean?" "This. Us. The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. The way my wolf purrs whenever you're near." Sarah's heart hammered. "Are you going to pretend you don't feel it too?" For a long moment, Reeve said nothing. Then, "You're my queen. It wouldn't be appropriate." "I don't care about appropriate." Sarah cupped his face in her hands, feeling bold and terrified in equal measure. I spent my whole life being told what I should be, what I should want, what I should do. For once, I want to choose something for myself, and I choose you." Reeve's eyes blazed gold. "Sarah." "Do you want me?" she interrupted. "Yes or no? It's that simple." "Yes." The word came out rough, honest. "God help me, yes. From the moment I found you in that wrecked room, looking fierce and frightened and beautiful, I've wanted you. But I'm your guard, Sarah, your commander. I have no title, no lands, no fortune. The court would never accept." "The court can burn." Sarah kissed him, cutting off his protests with the press of her lips against his. "I'm not asking you to be my king, Reeve. I'm asking you to be mine." Reeve groaned, his control shattering. He kissed her back with desperate intensity, his hands tangling in her hair, his wolf rising to meet hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were molten gold. "This is insane," he muttered. "Probably." Sarah grinned, feeling lighter than she had in months. "But I'm the queen. I can do what I want." "That's not how it works." "Then I'll make it how it works." Sarah kissed him again, softer this time. "Stay with me, Reeve. Not as my guard, not as my commander. Just stay." "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. "I'm yours, Sarah, for as long as you'll have me." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no magical solution to the kingdom's problems, no instant acceptance from the court, no guarantee that Thorn wouldn't emerge from hiding and challenge her rule. But for the first time since she'd walked into the palace, Sarah felt like she might actually survive this. More than survive, thrive. Because she wasn't alone anymore. She had Reeve, she had the guards, she had the common wolves who looked to her for hope. She had herself, the girl who'd been rejected and scorned and told she was nothing, who'd become a queen anyway. And that, Sarah thought as she leaned into Reeve's embrace, was enough. 6 months into her reign, Thorn finally made his move. He came with an army of rogue wolves and disgruntled nobles, declaring Sarah's rule illegitimate and demanding the throne be given to him, the true heir, descended from a distant branch of the royal line. Sarah met him on the battlefield with her own forces, the royal guard, the loyal packs, and every common wolf who'd chosen to fight for the queen who'd given them a voice. The battle was brutal and brief. Thorn was strong, but he was also arrogant, so certain of his victory that he challenged Sarah to single combat in front of both armies. It was the last mistake he ever made. Sarah fought in her wolf form, silver fur gleaming, alpha power blazing, and tore out Thorn's throat within minutes. His death broke the rebel forces, sending them scattering into the forest. When Sarah shifted back to human form, standing over Thorn's body with blood on her hands and victory burning in her chest, the entire battlefield dropped to one knee. Noble and common alike, they bowed to their queen. And Sarah, the orphan, the outcast, the girl who'd been told she was nothing, finally understood what it meant to belong. 2 years later, Sarah stood on the palace balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Reeve's arms wrapped around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "The council is asking about heirs again," he murmured. "Tell them to be patient." Sarah leaned back against him, smiling. "We have time." "Do we?" Reeve's hand splayed across her stomach, where the first flutter of new life had just begun to make itself known. "Because I'm pretty sure we're about 7 months away from giving them exactly what they want." Sarah's breath caught. "You know?" "I'm your mate, love. Of course I know." He turned her in his arms, his expression tender. "Are you happy?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "But yes, happy. Because this, the throne, the kingdom, the man who loved her, the child growing inside her, This was her choice, her path, her life. She was no longer the girl who'd been handed over to a widow with whispered instructions to hide. She was Queen Seraphina Stormborn, Alpha of Alphas, ruler of the Northern Realm. She was home, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. Sarah took her mate's hand and led him back inside the palace, the setting sun casting their shadows long across the stone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new choices. But tonight, she had everything she needed. She had love, she had purpose, she had belonging. She had finally become herself.